What's up, members of the Peter Griffin household? It's your host with the most troublesome junction, back at it again with another review video. Now, this is a long-awaited video that I was supposed to get done like 8 months ago. But I will get more into this later, but long story short, tracking all of these guys down has been a nightmare. I started looking for these guys at around February. It is November now, so let that sink in. We're going to be talking about the Corgi, Wallace, and Gromit Wrong Trousers train set, which they do come in 3 separate things. You have, of course, Feathers McGraw with the locomotive, tender, and coach. You have this set of 3 with Gromit and 3 coaches, and Wallace with 1 coach, 2 flatbeds. Now, the reason I'm making a video on this is there's 2 reasons. One is because there's like no coverage on these things. I've seen several people make like 5-second YouTube shorts of these, but there's only been like 1 video that really went in depth on these. Shout out to formerly known as Damien Lemaitre, but now he goes by Damien's Trains and Travels. Been watching his videos for like 10 years now. That is the only video where I found someone going more in depth and talking about these guys, but there's a lot of things about these that I would like to point out. The good and the bad. But I think first and foremost, a general introduction is that these are made by Corgi, who is kind of like a subdivision of Hornby, which is going to be a very important point later. And these things were made to commemorate the anniversary of one of the most iconic Wallace and Gromit, short movies, The Wrong Trousers. And this, I think, is a very solid looking thing. But there's so many odd choices that really make me ask, who is this for? But I will be getting into those things later. I think first and foremost, let's talk about the packaging, because this one, of course, just recently came, but all of them basically have the same package, where it'll have like the name of the character and what they come with. And then, of course, you have the nice window display, very much so like a lot of the Diecast, model cars and such, which, of course, that's what they're trying to replicate. It's labeled as a Diecast metal model, even though that's quite a dubious claim, which I will get into later. And then on the back of them, it shows a picture of what all 3 of them look like together. And of course, here's this little blurb. If you want to read it, you can. I, however, don't know how to fucking read, so have fun with that. But it is a very nice looking box. I love the, 2D kind of sketchwork scribbles on it. But without further ado, I think we should open up Feathers McGraw here, get a nice reunion with all of these guys together, and showcase some shenanigans going on Wallaby Street. So after removing the twist ties, we have a piece of N-scale straight track. It does look like nickel silver. It doesn't look like steel track, so that's very nice because if you don't know, if you're using steel track, it has a tendency to corrode and rust, so I guess that's a really nice addition that it's not steel track. And then we have Feathers here, who's doesn't have feet, just a fucking peg down there. He pegs into the tender down there, as you can see by that little slot. Then I'll grab this guy real quick. We have another one of these coaches, which are very ubiquitous with this. If you buy all 3, you get 5 of them, so you are getting a very sizable, portion of the train, so that's quite nice. We have the rink-a-dink little tiny Duke-looking ass tender here. Yes, the upper pieces are made of die-cast, but the chassis down here is unfortunately plastic, which I did run into a problem that I will get into a little later. Here, of course, we have the locomotive. Getting this out right here. And the side rods do move, which I think that's a very nice addition. It kind of reminds me of the Hallmark keepsake ornaments for Lionel, which are also very small, but they do have moving side rods for the steam locomotives. Really reminiscent of those, but this is just a very simple, like only has one going on to here. Like there's no one joining these 2 wheels together, but it is very accurate to the animation. It is die-cast, so this portion is quite heavy. Now, I do believe the chassis on this is actually metal. Like, oh no, I'm kind of bending the back part back here. This is plastic, but like all of this and the the cow catcher and the side pistons, they feel like metal. And I believe that this center part right here, which you can kind of see the coupler is a separately attached part, that is plastic. And that is one of the things I did want to point out, is that the coupling system on these is prone to breaking. As you can see right there, that big glob, that is super glue. I did have to re-glue this on. I think that with this being labeled as a die-cast, thing, yes, it is die-cast, but this bottom assembly should have also been made of die-cast, especially if you're using a really thin and honestly flimsy coupling system. While yes, it is accurate to the animation, I really do worry about these things snapping off and breaking if you do want to use them as little push-along things, or if you just want to, mess around with them. So now I'm going to go through and review each individual component of these guys, and then I'll show all of them together. But I think we should start with probably the one that people want the most, good old Feathers McGraw and the Locomotive Pack. So, starting out with him, we'll talk about the locomotive itself, going a bit more than what we did earlier. The lining is quite nice on this. It is a nice gold color, like a nice pearl gold. Really, really heavy thing. It is die cast. No detail in the cab, but then again, I do believe that is accurate to the animation. It is meant to be like a toyish model train, not meant to be something hyper realistic. The paint apps are simple but nice, and I would honestly argue this is probably the most durable piece in the entire line. It feels like this has a substantial bit more die cast in it, and handling it outside of the coupling on the back, as I pointed out earlier, I don't feel like I'm going to break this. The only plastic bits it seems like on this are the wheels, the side rods, and then the coupling down here. So you see this thin line that's going down the middle that's holding the wheels in? That is plastic, but the rest of this is die cast metal. So that is really nice to see. I think my only criticism would once again be the coupling system. I just think it's way too fragile and could have been a lot better, especially when the locomotive and the tender are going to be joined. And, it's probably going to be a piece that you want to stay as one unit, unless you are, cutting to the scene where, Wallace picks up the thing, gotcha, and then Feathers is rolling on his own. It's just a fucking bowling pin on wheels. Get the fuck out of here. Speaking of the tender, though, it is very simple, very tiny, but very accurate. It does have this little section here that, of course, Feather slots into, as mentioned before. But one strange thing, this does have buffers, but they're on the wrong fucking side. The buffers are supposed to be facing away from the locomotive, and this is something that applies to all of the rolling stock. I can grab a flatbed here, no buffers on the back, but they're on the front side. On the coaches, no buffers on the back, but they're on the front side. I don't know if that's animation accurate. I'll put it up on screen if it is, but in terms of actual trains, no, that is not accurate at all. So it is a very simple little thing, but I think once you, pair it with the locomotive, it is quite nice. And then we have Feathers here. I think this is a very nice iteration of Feathers McGraw. It would have been kind of nice if maybe they had included interchangeable feet, to where if you wanted to, pull him out, you could pop this out and then pop a set of feet on him. I think that would have been a nice inclusion, especially for the price you're paying for these. He is holding the sack that has the diamond in it. He's looking backwards. Clearly, all three of these guys are meant to represent the scene where after Wallace lands back on the train, getting out of the Techno trousers, even though I think it should have been the initial clip of them from the start of it, where Feathers has a gun, Gromit has the dome on his head, Wallace is in the Techno trousers, but we'll get more into that a lot later. Next up, we have the coach. It is a very simple coach. It really reminds me of the Skarloey Railway narrow gauge coaches. Once again, all of this up here is die cast, but the bottom part, unfortunately, is plastic. I don't like that at all. If you're selling a die cast toy, make it die cast. The wheels on the side do look nice. They're very animation accurate, but the flanges are not big enough. They do have a tendency to fluff off the rails, and I think that is super unfortunate. Again, we'll get more into my criticisms later of these as a whole, but the paint apps are quite nice. It has a substantial amount of weight to it, nowhere near as much as the locomotive over here, but a very nice piece for what it's trying to represent. Again, that kind of toy train sort of charm here. It rolls quite nicely when it actually wants to stay onto the rails, but really nice piece here. And then cutting behind, we do have the flat car. I just want to talk about this real quick because, you know, it's nothing really too much to declare. Once again, buffers are only on one side, which is just odd. The top brown part is die-cast, and again, the bottom is plastic, which, you know, I've already stated my grievances with that. I do find it quite strange that this flatbed is clear, like there's nothing on it, when in the animation, there was one of the flatbeds. Yes, there was one that was empty, but there was one that had logs on it. I think this should have had the logs on it. Like, it would have made Wallace's pack a little bit more interesting, because I really think of the three of them, he's definitely the weakest of the lot. You know, like, it just comes with him, a literally blank flat car, one coach, and it's like, yeah, it looks nice, and you could make the argument that he probably has, you know, some of the more diverse rolling stock outside of course, feathers, but I don't know. I just think that this is probably the most boring of the lot. Now moving on to Wallace himself. He is supposed to be clutching one of these coaches, and he comes with this as a trio pack. Flat car, one he's sitting on, and then a coach. But we're just going to be talking about Wallace here. So again, it is very screen accurate. Not a lot of seams that are really noticeable outside of this one on his nose. I think that that's like, come on now. Like, it's really, I don't know. If you're coining this off as this high-end, you know, display piece, I think you could have gotten that right. I do believe he also can pop off. There it goes. So has a little slit at the bottom of this flat car, and then one.
I'm a bit on the fence, lad. There's a nail up my arse and it hurts.
Here, it seems that these are all like molded into separate sections. Like, this is one molded piece. This is probably one, and it doesn't really have too much paint on it. And if I compare him to the Were-Rabbit Wallace figure from McFarlane, it is a very nice representation. Like, these actually do seem like they are in scale with each other if this guy was standing up. So, you know, that's really nice to see. This guy definitely has a more accurate flesh tone, whereas this guy is a bit pale, but, you know, you could argue that these two are meant to fulfill two separate purposes. Still a very, very nice Wallace figure, though, if you just want, you know, something just funny to look at. Like, it is a very funny-looking figure. But as mentioned before, I definitely think that this is the weakest of the three. I really do feel that this should have been him in the techno trousers trying to balance on these. And I think that that would have been a lot more dynamic and just more interesting to look at rather than him just, you know, flat car, him screaming. Like, it does the job. It's accurate to the scene, but I still just think that this could have been, you know, left in the oven a little bit longer to cook more. Now moving on to Gromit. So he comes with three coaches, and one of which is, you know, his kind of specialty one that has it where you can plug in his stomach peg into. He does have a seam line going all around him, which is quite noticeable. Again, if you're coining this as a display piece, you could have done a lot better, especially for the prices that these are going for. But one thing about these figures is that they are not flexible. They're very static and solid. Like, it feels like a resin figure. You know, like, maybe it's more rubbery, but like, I feel like I could snap the tail or the ears off. They're very, very static. Definitely feels like a resin statue. And he is clinging on to the front part of this coach, which means that no, you can't use this on curved track if you really are obsessed with the end scale compatibility or maybe trying to motorize these. Unless you were to maybe, I don't think putting this in hot water would work because it's not a soft material. You might have to outright resculpt the hands, maybe have them so that they're flat on top of this so it can articulate, but it honestly just seems like more trouble than it's worth. And when you compare them to the Were-Rabbit Gromit figure, they're very solid looking figures, you know? Like, I think that both of them are very accurate in their own ways. He's got a very bulbous body, but again, it's animation accurate. So if you do want to, you know, display these guys together, or maybe you want to do a stop motion or something, you certainly could get away with saying that, oh, these two in different scenes are, you know, the same one. They're very much so accurate. But then again, how do you mess up a character as simple as Gromit? Like, come on now. But again, I definitely think that he should have been in a bit more of a dynamic pose. And I guess Feathers is dead now. A very solid 3-pack, and with how common this is, I could see a lot of people just wanting to buy this one just for the sake of, oh, it's Gromit, it's, you know, the one of the cute dog characters just to have and put it on a mantle or something like that. Like, this definitely is a nice standalone piece, and I could see why a lot more people would probably want to buy this. I will say, if you do want to make a longer train, this is your pack to go for, because Gromit does come with 2 usable coaches, whereas Feathers and Wallace only come with 1, unless you want to get more flat cars, which, why the fuck would you want this shit? So I do think if you are to try and pick up, you know, a pack or 2 of these, I would say try and get the Gromit, and then of course Feathers. You can definitely pass on the Wallace and just buy the Metacom figure, which is, you know, him in the Techno trousers, and then just take an N-scale flatbed and just, like, you can glue them to it, or, you know, use some blue tack or something. And when you put them all together, they really do look great. Like, it's a nice, long, sizable train. You know, it really does embody the look and feel of what's going on in the wrong trousers. You know, this long train and zipping and zooming, and everyone's in dynamic poses. But I do have some criticisms with this that I really do want to talk about. One of the things is, as you can see here, not everything is lining up. Like, this coach right here is kind of popping up because of the coupling on this one. And then, of course, as you see here, the locomotive, like the tender, is also rising. That's because, despite these things being made to run on N-gauge track, the flanges are way too small to keep these things on track. And the coupling system does not blend well to that. Though, yes, it is technically accurate, I think that a little bit more engineering should have been made to go into the coupling system, because getting these guys together is actually really, really tedious, especially because some of these units, rather than just making one solid coupling system to join these two, because why would you take these two, you know, coaches apart? Gromit is going to be clinging onto one of them and sitting on the other. They're still separate coaches. There's not much you could do with them. And I think that that is one of the biggest detriments, is that I really don't know who this is trying to appeal to. Because on one hand, yes, it does have the rolling wheels, but also when you roll them around just for a little bit, things start to derail, bounce up and down, and fall off the tracks. Like, it's not very good at riding the rails. Like, if you think I'm being dubious here, here's just the locomotive rolling on the track, and if you look at it, it's bouncing up and down. Like, it's clearly not set right, you know? So, like, trying to use this as a proper train, I don't know, that's a little dubious. I don't think that that's, you know, I definitely think that's a QC issue. Why is it so wobbly? And when you attach the tender to it, like, look at that. He's just bobbing up and down. And before you tell me, oh, that's a play feature, why would it be a play feature to lift your wheels off of the, you know, so the flange is not interacting with the track? Like this, you're gonna roll it back and forth a couple of times. It's only a matter of time before it derails like that. Right, so as you can see, I'm trying to roll the whole train, and it's like holding together now. I think it's because everything is, you know, in place, but you can see, like, right over there, the wheels are lifting up in parts. Like, it's just not, this really was not made to run on these rails. And I just think, why not make a static piece, or if you're gonna make the train wheels, do it right. Like, you're literally a division of a model train company. Like, come on now. I think they're definitely holding on better when you have all of them, just because there's more weight to put it down, but definitely on their own, like, these guys do not like sticking to the rails. My thing is this, though, if they can't run well as, like, sold individually as the 3-packs, why are they sold separately? Like, I definitely do feel a more reasonable price point for these would have been all of this right here that you see, $50. That is a very reasonable price. I'm not gonna hear no ifs, ands, buts about it. Maybe like 40, 50 bucks for all of this, like, that is a very reasonable price for a box set. It also can't negate curves because of characters like, you know, you have Gromit clinging onto these two coaches, Wallace clinging onto this coach while sitting on a flatbed. These guys can't corner. So these guys basically, if you wanted to use them on model train track, you have to only go on straight sections, which if you're trying to do, wrong trousers stop motion or something like that, you're going to have to like retool their arms or something like that, or just not include them at all because you can't curve them around or make them zip and zoom like they do in the actual short. And if you want these to be these dynamic die-cast little things like the likes of Hot Wheels or so, why are they so fragile? Like, why are the coupling systems prone to breaking? These should have been metal, or they should have been made like how Thomas Adventures, where they have those really, like, add a more dynamic and durable coupling system, because I'll be honest, this is worse than the Ertl coupling system, and I'm an avid Ertl defender. How do you get worse than default fucking Ertl? But then it begs the question, why not make this a single statue? Kind of like if you guys know those model railway catalogs that come with like double O or N scale locomotives, they're on those little raised base plates and the engines are bolted down to them. I think this should have been like that if you wanted a solid display piece. But then it begs the question, if you wanted a static display piece, why aren't these guys in more dynamic poses? I feel that one, Feathers should have been in the pose where he has a gun. Gromit should have had the light cover dome on his head when he gets shot by Feathers. And then Wallace should be in the techno trousers. If you're bolting them to a base plate, you wouldn't run the issue of, Wallace standing on, with the techno trousers, it would be top heavy. Well, if it's bolted to a base plate, you wouldn't have to worry about that. So it just kind of begs the question of, why it feels like they're trying to do both, of be something that's dynamic, usable like a Hot Wheel or a model train, but also be a stagnant display piece. Because it can't really be a model train because it doesn't ride the rails well, it doesn't corner. But it also can't be a static display piece because why is it on segmented N-scale track instead of a raised base plate? Why are all of the characters, yes, they're in nice poses, but they could be so much more dynamic? It's just like, it feels like they tried to do both, but failed. Get rid of the N-scale track. I think that bottom line, this should have been a big base plate that could have clicked in together like a raised base plate that had little grooves in it, which would have held the wheels in place. I would honestly say, if you just want representation of the Wrong Trousers chase scene, buy the bath toppers, because each of these sections with the 3 cars and each character, you're looking at around $45 to $60 a piece. And good luck trying to track down Feathers McGraw because it wasn't easy. But you can get all 3 of those bath toppers for probably the price of just one of these. I think that if you just want a nice display piece, buy the bath toppers, maybe put them on a base plate, or maybe even go through and add your own N-scale flatbed or something like that, and bada bing, bada boom, you basically got this for like a fraction of the cost. But I will say, if you are a big Wallace and Gromit fan, buy this. Or at least, you might find enjoyment out of getting these guys, just because, one, new Wallace and Gromit merchandise, but 2, some people find excitement in the thrill of the chase. But I will say as much, if you live in the United States and you're trying to track these down, good fucking luck. These guys are relatively easy to find, although they are expensive. This son of a bitch might as well be gold. Like, that is how hard he is to find. But as hard as I've been on this set, I really gotta say I'm very happy with it now that I finally have it all complete. But I would not go through the heartache of trying to track these guys down again. Like, I do not want to go through that. I'm very happy to have it all complete. It looks great, but there's definitely going to be some changes that I'm going to make to it. One of the things is I really would like to go through and add a Thomas Adventures coupling system between the locomotive and the tender, just so I can, have them be have a little bit more clutch power and not have to worry about these flimsy, coupling systems breaking and everything. That's, again, something really to look out for, that if you want to get these to use as Hot Wheels or this, that, and the third, you're really going to be treading on thin ice here. So that's all I got to say about these guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the flip side.
ass! Spimpton ass! Yes! Spimpton yes! Spimpton yes!